All right, now that we've got everybody here, I'm going to reconvene our meeting to open session. The board was in executive session since 6 o'clock to discuss an individual personnel matter and some contractual matters. We could start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Introductions. At the meeting today, we have from the board, Meredith Moriarty, Jonathan Fishbein, Chris Meyer, Christine Beck, Willow Bear, Wendy Sampson, and myself. And I see Jody Monroe, Dave Hurst, Judy Kehoe, and Kathy Johnston joining us as well. First on the agenda is approval of the minutes of our May 11th, 2020 meeting. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the minutes from the May 11th, 2020 special board meeting. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That carries. Next up is our Superintendents Report.
Thank you. So I wanted to provide an update on some of the end of the year activities, particularly for our seniors. With our other grade levels, we are doing some end of the year activities as well for middle school and elementary. But I know people are curious as to some of the activities that we're doing for our senior class. So on June 4th, we're doing a senior banquet, which will be held at the Jericho Drive-In, where members of the senior class can celebrate safely. The senior ball is going to be June 6th, where they will have a virtual DJ. I believe they're taking photos and putting them on Instagram. The senior awards will take place June 12th, and they'll have a viewing party to recognize all of the students who are receiving awards. The teachers and administrators will be delivering caps and gowns to the seniors June 12th through the 17th, and they'll provide more details on that. I believe they're also bringing their yearbooks as well during that. And just yesterday, we did work with the Bethlehem Police Department, and I don't have all of the details yet because we just spoke with them to do a reverse parade at the high school, which would happen on June 26th, where a student would arrive in their car with their family, one car per student, and would be able to receive their diploma outside. We would have social distance and obviously other health and safety measures in place. So we would essentially split them into two groups in the morning, perhaps 9 to 11. We don't have the exact times. And then 11:30 to 1:30. They could get out. We would have a photographer there so they could take their picture in their cap and gown. And then we would be inviting our faculty and staff. That was one of the big questions, is how many faculty and staff could we include? And they would be along the parade line, whatever that looks like. We're still working out the details to recognize and celebrate the class. Then that evening, we would do a viewing at the Jericho Drive-In for students to go and hear the graduation speeches that they would have had at the actual graduation. So again, all the details are not worked out, but that's at least right now what we have. We weren't sure we would be able to do that, but it does seem that is going to work. So I wanted to provide everyone with an update, and we do have a link on our website for anyone to go and look at that as it gets updated on a more regular basis. Also, I wanted to recognize our retirees. I think, Brittany, you have a slide that we can share, correct? There it is. Thank you. So tomorrow would have been our annual retirement reception that we typically hold on site or at the Norman side to celebrate our retirees. We did still this year do all of the write-ups that we typically do to honor them, but I did want to recognize the retirees virtually, and they will get a certificate. So I'd like to recognize the following: Kathy Buckley, who was an art teacher for 32 years of service; Melissa DePauli, an English teacher at the high school for 29 years of service; Mithel Murthy, a school monitor at Ellesmere for 15 years; Mary Dugas, and the high school registrar in 23 years of service; Sally Fitzpatrick, a school monitor at the library at the middle school for 20 years; Kathy Fredette, an elementary teacher at Ellesmere for 32 years of service; Kim Ganley, it's a little too big, elementary teacher at Glenmont for 32 years of service; Loretta Jerome, a school monitor at Glenmont for 27 years; James Josie, a bus driver for 12 years; Ronald Kuklis, a building maintenance mechanic for 17 years; Mary Landry, a speech teacher at the middle school for 21 years; Virginia Lawler, an elementary teacher at Eagle for 25 years; Pam Lipinski, a bus driver for 16 years; Paul Lukachet, a food service helper at Ellesmere for 9 years; Jan Miller, an aide to students with disability at the middle school for 20 years; Barb Monty, an elementary teacher at Slingerlands for 16; Kim Munsell, a reading teacher at Slingerlands for 22 years of service; Patricia Myers, a food service helper at Eagle for 18 years of service; Kathleen Normile, a Glenmont elementary teacher for 31 years; John Osterhout, a bus driver for 15 years; Zoraida Pilot, a school monitor for 15 years; Sharon Pohl, a bus driver for 21 years of service; Lisa Relier, a head custodian at the middle school who served 31 years; Anna Salisbury, a bus attendant who served 16 years; Doreen Slingerland, a bus garage dispatcher for 24 years; William Bruman, a bus driver for 36 years of service; Missy Waller, an elementary teacher at Ellesmere for 34 years; and Lisa Wood, a science teacher at the middle school for 28 years. We did put together, even though we couldn't recognize them in person, we did put together a little video for them with some photos of them over the years that we'll be sharing with the staff tomorrow. So I just wanted to take a moment. If you add up all those years, it's a lot of time. And it's unfortunate that this is the circumstance in which they're all retiring. But I think it's important that we still recognize and celebrate them. So, and that's my superintendent's report. Thank you.
Thanks, Jody. One question I had about the end of year activities for the seniors is, I know I've seen recently, it seems like some other states are now allowing some in-person socially distanced graduations. Obviously, we have no idea what's going to happen in New York, but are we simultaneously planning in the event that we were able to do something like that?
We have the Times Union Center still booked for the June 26th date, although I think as the time goes on, it's harder to make those plans because we have to hire a company to do the virtual piece of it as well. If they said tomorrow or even next week, we could go ahead with it. I think that would be different. The guidance that I've had does not seem like New York State is going to allow the large crowds like that before the end of the school year.
Okay. Thanks. Did anybody else have any questions for Jody?
Yes, I wanted to know, I thought we changed the date to August 7th. That was communicated as a backup date?
I think it was August 8th that Dave had contacted them, or we have it tentatively booked. The TU Center you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So there's still that backup date, potentially.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else have any questions? Next on the agenda is our board report. And I would just like to reiterate the congratulations to all of the retirees this year. It is a huge number of years of service to the district. And even though we can't do it in person, I do want to make sure that they all know that their service was appreciated and that they will be missed. We did have 2 committee meetings since our last meeting. We had our policy committee meeting. We went through a number of policies, particularly with respect to some of the new requirements for technology and privacy and security. And some of those policies and revisions will probably be showing up on our agendas at some point in the future. And I know there are some change orders on the agenda tonight from the facilities committee. So if somebody had just a second to report out who was at the facilities committee meeting, that would be terrific.
I could report out on it. Jonathan, Wendy, and myself were at the facilities meeting that occurred, and there weren't that many change orders. We went over a few. One of the main was finishing up the parking lot. I believe that Slingerland's adding a change order in for that to do some work that we now had the ability to do with the students not being in the building. And so we did make those changes. Jonathan, I don't know if you want to chime in on any other additional change orders. There were some windows, but everything was pretty straightforward.
It was straightforward, and there were no surprises, which is always nice.
Great. And do the projects that we're currently able to work on, do they seem like they're continuing as they should?
Well, we're ahead of schedule on some of them because of the fact that school is not in session in the normal way, so they can continue working in places where they would normally have to wait for the summer.
Mm-hmm. And it's actually picking up now where there's more contractors with the ability to come and do some work that was postponed due to the COVID response, where there was limited travel. So that is picking up as well. So I would say that they are definitely looking at being on time.
Great. I see that as some good news.
Although we can't use the auditorium, which is kind of ironic.
Does anyone else from the board have anything to report out on?
Just that the 3 of us participated in Meet the Candidate night virtually, which was a new experience, and it went well, I thought, considering it was the first time that we had to do it in that venue. And just thank you to Brittany for helping coordinate that. She did a terrific job. And I did have a question for Jody with regard to one of the senior events, because somebody had presented it, which was one of the events at the Jericho. If there are students that might not be able to have transportation to get there, like they don't drive or they're not going with a parent, if it's a student activity, I said, oh, well, that's a good question.
I know that Dave is looking at different options for that. I know yesterday when we were meeting with the police and talked about the drive-through piece of graduation, we talked about Uber operating, but Uber but it's limited. So he's going to ask that anyone who has an issue with transportation to contact him directly so he can see what options he could potentially find for them.
Okay. I just wanted to bring it up because I hadn't thought of it myself, and I was thinking, well, that's a good idea if somebody doesn't want to go to the Jericho or something with their parents. So,
and
all right.
I think what's at the Jericho, I don't know. I know the graduation piece would be, but I don't know about the one coming up sooner would be something that kids could watch after the fact, but I can double check on that so if they're not able to attend.
Okay.
I just wanted to comment on the teacher retirements, and again, thank everyone for their tremendous number of service. 2 teachers that my children have had are on that list, so I can say from personal experience, I'm just blown away by their dedication. especially ending their long careers in this manner, learning a new way of teaching in the last 3 months of a 30-plus year career is quite an accomplishment. So I wanted to thank everyone on that list for their service, and know that even though we can't celebrate in person, we really, truly do celebrate them every day and thank them.
Anybody else? Next, we have our budget hearing, and first we're going to do our 2020-2021 budget overview.
Okay, give me 1 minute. I'm just going to share the screen. Okay, can everybody see that, the opening slide? Okay, so remember, I can't really see all of you, so if you need me to stop at any point, give me an audible clue on that. So we've had all of our many meetings, we had adopted the budget, and tonight is the night for the public hearing where we give a quick overview of where we're at, and we'll give the public an opportunity to comment and ask questions about the budget as proposed. I think we certainly have been tested in all the areas of our district's mission since we went to remote instruction in the middle of March. But we continue to be so proud of our students, especially our soon-to-be graduates, for all of their efforts to serve the community as they're going out from Bethlehem and into the bigger world. And as we noted, our teachers and other staff have really rallied to adopt to the new changes in how we're delivering our services. And of course, our food service and transportation staff, we're now doing over 300 families, serving them with breakfast and lunch each day. So people have indeed rallied, and what I personally like about the budget is that this is our chance to provide those resources to keep those services rolling forward. Our revenues as adopted in the budget include an increase in our property taxes equal to 2.34%, or about $1.573 million, and that is in accordance with the tax cap formulas. We did also anticipate a significant reduction in our state aid. The actual numbers have not been announced yet by the governor, but based on some of the indications of the 20% reduction or more, we assumed a $3 million reduction in state aid, and we put in a line to draw upon our fund balance, which is possible thanks to some money saved in this budget year. So we're using those monies to offset the loss of state aid in the coming year. State aid, as I noted, the only line that is affected significantly based on the governor's adopted budget is the foundation aid. For now, we're assuming a $3 million reduction. All of the other aid items are what's known as expense-based reimbursements. Based on spending less in the current year, we may end up seeing less money coming into us in those areas, but for now, we just rolled that all into a reduction under foundation aid, and the budget has the $26.1 million as our state aid estimate. We are required to keep our undesignated fund balance to less than 4% of the adopted budget in the coming year. And this budget achieves that at $4.1 million. There are relatively minor changes in the other restricted components of fund balance. The only change really from last year is, as I mentioned, that appropriated fund balance, or our plans to draw down upon that. We are anticipating about a $4 million surplus in the current year. And again, that is what is allowing us to charge fund balance next year. The tax cap calculations. We are in full compliance with those requirements. It is indeed a formula. It's not just a straight 2% as many people think it is. We have the tax-based growth factor, which reflects changes in assessment values within the community. That allowable levy growth factor is the inflation factor, and we're limited to the lower of either the actual rate of inflation or 2%. So in this case, the 1.81% was the inflation factor that we needed to use. So again, that 2.34% yields $1,573,000, and because that is in line with the requirements in order to have our budget pass, we need a simple majority, 50% plus 1. We've had a number of questions over the years about why the tax rates are different between our two communities, between Bethlehem and New Scotland. So we put together a different way to explain that in hopes of making it easier for people to understand why there are differences between the two. So in order to calculate our rates, in order to equalize things between the two separate communities within the Bethlehem Central School District, we use equalization rates, which are issued by New York State. And if the equalization rate is at 100%, that means that the values of the properties as they are assessed are in line with the market value of the properties based on sales data that the state tracks for each community. When the equalization rates are less than 100%, it essentially means that the assessed levels are below the full market value. So in this case, for Bethlehem in the current year, the equalization rate is at 95%. So that means that the state has determined that the assessed values for the average home in Bethlehem is 5% lower than the market value. So while you might have two identical homes in Bethlehem and in New Scotland, both worth $250,000, because of how they are assessed, the assessed value is 5% lower. Similarly, in New Scotland, they have a different E-grade. It actually dropped 1% from the prior year and is now at 91%. So that means in New Scotland, the homes are 9% below the full market value. Because the tax levies are split between homeowners in each of the communities based on the assessed values, if the assessed values were not to be adjusted based on these equalization rates, it would mean that people in the town of Bethlehem would in fact be paying more in taxes than residents in New Scotland. So if you take these actual assessed values and you multiply them by the current estimates for the tax rates per thousand, the 21.4999 in Bethlehem and the 22.44 in New Scotland, you can see that it would yield the same amount of taxes due. So the New Scotland rate is higher effectively to compensate for the state's determination rate that the overall assessments are lower within that community. So hopefully that makes it a little bit easier for people to understand. I know several years back, we had a very unusual period of, I think it was 3 years in a row, where the equalization rates in both communities were at 100%. And that was the first time and throughout that period where the tax rates were identical. So if we can get back to that scenario where we're at 100%, or even if we're both at the same equalization rates in both communities, then we could get back to a time when the rates are equal. On the expenditure side, our budget, these totals include all of the changes that were discussed in our various budget meetings. The changes to the budget were relatively nominal in this current year. A number of the changes within the departments were reflecting changes in the configurations of staff where we might eliminate one position and then create another position. In the K-12 instructional program, we had added just under 200,000, and that was growth in 2.25 full-time equivalents, elementary teacher, and then some core area support for the Excel program in the high school. And then there was a 0.1 FTE growth in the special ed department for about 63,000. So in the grand scheme of the budget, relatively nominal increases overall. And if you look at the expenditures in a different view, this just breaks it out by program area, and I think helps show that, in fact, the vast majority of our budget, those costs are aligned with our mission, which is the provision of all of our student services. Also included within our budget is a $100,000 line item for a capital outlay, which is a simplified or a mini capital project. And we'll go through state ed, and then they reimburse us at our building aid rate. So the net cost to the district will be around $32,000 after we factor out the state aid. The absentee ballot procedure, I think, has probably been of the greatest interest to our community. Since we first published our poll list and then invited people to verify the information for us, and then we provided a means for them to update their information so that they could be added to the list, we've added probably close to 600 or 700 names since this list first was created. The list has in fact been sent to the mailing house, and those ballots should be arriving in people's mailboxes around June 1st or 2nd. And if we get any other requests now, we can still mail out ballots. We would just mail them out directly instead of going through the mail house. So these absentee ballots will be coming to residents, and there is a quick turnaround on these based on the timeline stemming from this executive order. So the ballots will, in order to be counted, they will need to be returned to the district by 5 p.m. on the designated vote date, which is June 9th. So we ordered a special box where the community can actually drop off their ballots. So if there's any concern about whether the Postal Service will get it to us on time, if they're feeling pressed for time, they can just drive by the high school and drop the ballot in the box. So we will have that ready to go by the time people have their ballots in hand, and it'll just provide a way for people to have the peace of mind that their votes are in fact counted.
Judy, this is Holly. Where will that box be?
The box will be in the front of the high school on the Delaware Avenue entrance, underneath the overhang in front of the main entrance to the building. So it'll be protected from the elements. And we also envision that that will be the spot where, if people are afraid about having, say they contact us the week before the ballots are sent out, if they're concerned about getting it in hand in time, we're going to designate June 8th as the time when people can come by the high school to that same location and actually pick up their ballots. And then they'll be able to fill them out and return them to the drop box in time for the deadlines. So that's breaking news. We just worked out those details today, and we'll be working with communications to make sure that that word gets out to the community. We'll update the web page, and then we'll also send out notifications to the community on that as well.
Judy, this is Jonathan.
Yes.
If someone has not sent in the information that they're not on the list and they want to get the ballot mailed to them, now that the list is going to the mailing house, what is the procedure for them to have you send them a ballot by mail?
Same procedure as before. If you go to our website, there's an address on there. It's called voterinfo@bethlehemschools.org, where they can mail that information in. And there's also a dedicated phone line where people can call and leave their message. So that will enable us to send them a ballot, and they should be all set. We've tried to make it as easy as possible. We recognize that this is certainly a major change for the community. It's certainly a major change for the staff. Usually we look forward to having the community come out, and we like seeing them in person on the day of the vote. So sincerely hope that we're able to do that in the coming year, and that perhaps this year is just a major aberration from usual times. We are planning to start counting the ballots at 5 o'clock on June 9th. We understand that everybody is eager to get the results. So we will be live streaming the counting of those ballots. We can't have the public in, but we can certainly make it available to them, similar to the format for these meetings. So we're hoping to be able to finish that in that evening of counting. If not, we may extend into the following morning, but we will absolutely have it done in time for the board to accept those results at a special meeting on June 10th at 4:30.
Judy, how secure? I've never had one of those drop boxes. Are they secure? Is there any concern with that at all? Like, can they be tampered with, or kids or whatever?
The box will be bolted down to the concrete in the front of the high school.
Oh, okay, all right. I didn't realize what it was. So
it's locked up. Only a limited number of staff have the keys to access the ballots, to pull them from there. There is a security camera that is in place as well. So it's reasonably secure. And again, that was the best option that we could identify to enable people to drop off their ballots when we're in an otherwise closed mode of operations.
No, it sounds like a good idea. Definitely.
Yeah, and this is common. Other districts are doing the same type of thing. Again, we want those ballots to come in, and we don't want people worried over, is it going to get there or not? So also on the ballot are the Board of Education seats. We have the 7 candidates who are vying for 3 seats. So the top 3 highest vote getters will be beginning a 3-year term that would start July 1st of 2020. And you noted the joys of the candidate forum. That is available on our website, where anybody who's interested can go in and view that and have an opportunity to get to know the candidates a little bit better. Also on the ballot is the standard bus replacement proposition for 13 buses at a cost not to exceed $1.2 million. And this is in keeping with the overall replacement plan for the district. Recall that we also had our consultants, when they were looking at the Start School Later feasibility analysis, they had also looked at our fleet replacement plan and had affirmed that the way that we were doing this was an appropriate way to be managing the fleet, to balance out the costs of maintenance on older buses versus the efficiencies of the newer buses. And also remember that if this is approved, it does not affect the budget totals that are presented. What this does is it gives us the authorization to actually make these capital purchases. And similar to other capital purchases of this magnitude, we do receive state aid. So we would get about 2/3 of the cost of these buses reimbursed to us as part of our transportation aid. So future meetings, next up is the budget vote on June 9th, which essentially is just the deadline. There's no in-person voting. We'll meet on the 10th to accept the results. And in the event the budget does not pass, we then would need to move directly to a contingency budget, where we would need to make some significant reductions to those program costs. So we'll see what the voters decide and go from there. So that is the quick overview of the budget. And I will stop sharing my screen unless you have questions on that.
Judy, I don't have a question. I just wanted to reiterate that the total budget that we're asking to be approved is a cap on the maximum that we can spend. It doesn't mean that you have to spend it. And we've talked about really needing to think about each individual purchase in light of whatever's coming out from state ed for guidance about what next year will look like, and not running out and spending things that might not make the most sense in a bad budget environment next year. So I just wanted to reiterate that.
Yes, that is absolutely correct. Until we have some degree of certainty on what the aid looks like, we will not be spending anything that is not absolutely essential.
Thank you.
Judy or Jody, the meeting to affirm the vote, is that that's at 4:30. Will there be an exec session? Will that be a traditional board meeting, or is it just for the purposes of approving the vote?
That should be just for accepting the official results of the vote.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Judy. Anybody have any other questions or comments? At this point, we will open our public hearing. Tonight, we are holding the public hearing on our proposed budget as required by law. The notice of this hearing was published in the Spotlight, and a copy of the proof of publication will be included within the official minutes. At this time, I invite any members of the public to speak who wish to offer up comments either for or against on the proposed budget. I ask that you speak by using the Q&A function on the bottom right of the screen, and please provide your name for the record prior to offering your comments. We did receive a few comments in advance of the meeting this evening. I will read those now, and they do all cover the same topic. So I'll read all three of them, and then Judy, maybe you can are probably going to be the best one to respond briefly to them. The first comment comes from Edward Crasher, who says, "You raised our taxes in New Scotland to make it equal to people who live in Bethlehem last year, and now you want to raise it again. Are you trying to get rid of the middle class? My mortgage went up $100 a month last year because of your tax hike." We also heard from Dawn Crasher, who comments, "Last year you raised the town of New Scotland taxes and stated it was due to evening out the taxes from previous years. It was a huge increase, which results in my mortgage going up nearly $100 a month. Now I see you want yet again to raise our taxes more, and other towns don't increase as much. Why are we being slammed again in this town? This is clearly not fair that our taxes are increasing more than other towns for a second year in a row. I'm against this increase and don't agree with it." And the third comment comes from Michael Frey, who writes, "It is my understanding that you're proposing a school tax increase again. You've done this already to try to make New Scotland equal to Bethlehem. My taxes went up already and we are feeling the squeeze. Stop the tax hike." So Judy, I was thinking maybe, I know you discussed it in your presentation, but if you could just comment again on the equalization rate between Bethlehem and New Scotland, I think that might be helpful.
Yeah, and I know this is frustrating, and this year, the New Scotland rates are higher than the Bethlehem rates. If you go back and look at the history of this, there have been a number of years where, in fact, it's been the other way around. It really changes each year based on the changes in those equalization rates relative to each of the communities. So we don't really control those rates. We simply control the tax levy itself. And we are living within the statutory tax cap, and looking at the budget as a whole. The reason we did that was recognizing that our revenues come from either state aid or property taxes. And in a time when we're really trying to meet increased need for student services, to be facing that loss of state aid means we had no other option really, short of making massive reductions that would harm the program, is to put in this tax increase in accordance with the tax cap.
Thank you, Judy. At this time, we do not have any open questions coming in or any comments for or against on the budget. So I will close the public hearing on the budget. Next on the agenda would be our recognition of public comment. We did not receive any comments submitted before our meeting this evening, other than the 3 that I read in previously in connection with the budget hearing. Item 6 on our agenda, action items. A, finance action items. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following finance action items 1 through 3.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
I'll try that again. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That carries. B, professional personnel action items. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following professional personnel action item 1.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? That passes. C, support personnel action items. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following support staff action items 1 through 6.
So moved.
Moved. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That carries. D, other action items.
Holly, I just wanted to mention that one of the finance actions was a donation. So I just wanted to thank Bethlehem Music Association for the donation of the purchase of the piano.
Oh, thank you, Meredith. And I believe that was the piano that we actually heard during the Slingerland's musical.
Yes, we did. It was beautiful.
D, other action items. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following action items 1 through 6.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? I'm just going to point out that these items do include the revision to the school calendar for this year. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? That carries. 7, future meetings and events. Our next board meeting will be on Wednesday, June 3rd at 7 o'clock, anticipating an executive session starting at 6 o'clock. On Tuesday, June 9th, as discussed, is the date that all the absentee ballots will be due back to the school by 5 p.m. For the 2020 annual budget vote and election. Wednesday, June 10th at 4:30, there will be a special board meeting to certify the election results. And Wednesday, June 17th, will be the regular board meeting after that at 7 p.m., anticipating an executive session beforehand at 6 o'clock.
Holly, is that the organizational meeting? Or no?
No,
It's the one in July, right?
Correct. The organizational meeting would be the first meeting in July.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no need to go back into executive session, can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Meeting adjourned.